I want to say hi to everyone who just joined. Welcome to our basic training workshop. Uh, in this workshop, we're going to cover a few things. Since all of you have been doing career karma for the last few days, you've been doing the challenge. Uh, we want to make sure that you start thinking about the next steps, and the next steps are usually figuring out which coding school would be the right fit for you. And there are several things that come into play, like finances is a big one, your schedule is a big one, getting accepted obviously is a huge one. So in basic training, we're going to cover all of that. Towards the end of the basic training workshop, I'm actually going to talk about how do you pass these interviews and how do you get accepted. And this way, every single person who is on this call right now should have all the tools they need to get accepted into all of the top schools. And we've helped hundreds of people in career karma to go through this process. So at this point, it's like a formula. So I'm going to talk about all the steps. And then afterwards, you can reach out to me if you have any questions, and we can set up time for you to get started too. But before I begin, I wanted to ask all of you, how many people are looking at doing part-time programs, part-time coding boot camps? Okay. And feel free to use the chat. So I see there's a few people who are part-timers. What about full-time? Anyone is looking to do full-time? I think Felicia, okay. Becky, Jamie part-time, Elizabeth full-time. So for this meeting, I wanted to set the expectation in terms of the time commitment for each of the formats. And the reason it's important is as you're picking a school, you want to make sure that you don't just apply to a school thinking you can handle the workload. You can actually, you can save yourself a lot of time by knowing what the time requirement is for full-time, part-time, or self-paced. And this way you can manage your expectation, because the worst thing that we want people to do is sign up for something that's something that they won't have time for, and then have to switch to a different course or have to stop and look for something else. And so for people who are looking to do a full-time boot camp, there's a reason why it's called a boot camp. So usually the way they set up the structure is it's from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. Each school has their own hours, but it's usually like an 8 or 9 a day time commitment for classroom time. But from speaking to a lot of students and from going through this process myself, I know that most people doing full-time boot camps are spending their evenings reviewing stuff from the night before, reviewing stuff for the next day, and on weekends you're pretty much preparing for the upcoming week and reviewing stuff from the previous week. And so on average, I would say it's about a 50 to a 60 hour a week commitment for people who want to do something full time. Okay. And during that time, some schools, as you start applying, they'll start asking you questions like, well, can you commit this time? Can you also afford not to work for 3 to 6 months as you're doing it? Because if you start a boot camp, but then you run out of savings and your resources, they've seen a lot of people's plans get derailed. And so that's one of the main things they'll also ask you in those interviews, to make sure that you actually are ready for the programs. The other format, for those of you who cannot commit 50 to 60 hours a week, you can do something part-time. And for part-time, it's about a 20 to a 25, 30 hour commitment a week. And usually there's a set schedule of you meeting from like 6 to 9 during the week, and then one day on weekends. But for people who are working, who are taking care of their kids, I see there's a lot of parents on this call, it's still manageable. And there's other people in Career Karma who are parents who are doing this. And I encourage all of you to reach out to them if you can find them. If you can't find them, just let me know and I'll connect you to them. But a 20 to a 30 hour a week commitment it's more manageable. And there's actually a third option that some people haven't heard about, called self-paced or flexible. And that option is made for people who might travel during the week, or they have an unpredictable schedule. And so for people looking to do flexible, you still get the same support and you go at the pace of a part-time course, but you get to meet up your own hours and you get to decide when you're meeting with your mentor and what you're going to be doing that week. And so these are the three different formats. Any questions about the time commitment or what it takes to be successful at each? No questions? Feel free to put them in the chat if you do. So the next thing comes down to, so how do you, okay, so is there a place to research which schools offer the different options? Jen, great question. We actually put together a small guide to help people start looking at schools that offer income sharing, offer online, part-time, and full-time courses. So I'm going to share that link with you. But the other thing I wanted to discuss is what is the approach, like Jen said, what is the approach for picking a boot camp, right? Because there's a lot of schools out there, and I think a few years ago, you had to pay for some of these schools up front. Today, you actually don't have to. And that's one of the reasons why we hold these sessions, because we want to make sure that whichever option you choose, the school actually has economic incentive to get you the outcome and to make sure that you're in a job after you attend the school. The reason it's important to us is that as the industry matures, there's now hundreds of coding schools out there. Fortunately, there's schools that actually stand by their outcomes, and they either provide money-back guarantees. So for people who might be paying a monthly payment, if you decide to go that route, there's places like Thinkful and Flatiron that provide a money-back guarantee if you don't get a job within 6 months. And that's a very important factor, because not only is your risk limited, but the school is confident that what they're teaching you gets you results. That's why they're willing to offer this option. For other people who want to do income sharing, it pretty much accomplishes the same thing, where you almost have an insurance policy baked into the payment plan, because a school that's successful and that gets you a job will actually end up getting paid back once you're working as a developer. But the schools that don't get people the jobs, they won't see a dime come out of your salary. And so that also will force the schools that offer that to take what they're teaching you seriously. And that's one of the greatest things that happened recently. And so as you're thinking about what coding school to do, you should always ask yourself, how do I avoid being in a position where I'm paying the school up front and they're getting paid, and at the end of it, there's not going to be any economic incentive for the school to get me the job that I signed up for, that I really want. You know, any questions about that, of how to evaluate that from that standpoint? I think as people are starting to explore different courses, what you should start asking yourself is, do I want to do something that's part-time or full-time? That's why I asked you that question before. If you want to do a school that's part-time, most of those programs are online. If you want to do a school that's full-time, they have full-time courses in person and online. And so you have a few more options to pick from. But once you decide full-time or part-time, in person or online, and then you decide what payment option works best for you, that will narrow down your choices to about 2 or 3 schools. So you might start with like 10 or 20 schools, but what your goal should be is not just narrow down to 1 school, but narrow it down to 2 or 3 schools. And usually for 9 out of 10 people, the payment model is usually the big decider. So as you're looking at schools, pay attention to their payment model and if it fits your budget. The other 2 is just full-time, part-time, in person and online. And that way, you'll at least have a few schools that you're excited about. Any questions about that? Okay, let me see. There's some questions in the chat. Let me answer them. Becky had a great question. So, what if you start doing something full time and you want to switch to part time because you realize that it's a big time commitment? So, some schools actually allow you to switch to their different format, to the other format. And so, if you're starting with full time, I know Lambda is one of the schools that will allow you to switch to part time and vice versa. If you're doing part time and let's say you get a job before you even graduate, you can still continue doing Lambda's part-time course or switch from full-time to part-time once you get a job. So they're more flexible around that. Most of these schools, they do want you to succeed. So they may not say it openly on their website, but when you speak to their advisors, I recommend asking them questions about what support they provide to people who fall behind, and asking them questions about what is the process if people are allowed to switch from one format to the next. So those are all really good questions to ask to the advisors. Jen had a question too. She said, any advice if even the percentage out of a salary afterwards seems scary? As a parent with a mortgage and a student loans and kids expenses, 17 or 20% of my income over 2 or 5 years is really pretty big payment. So Jen, this is a great question. So you have to look at it from a standpoint of what is which outcome would you expect, and worst case scenario, medium case, like the average scenario, and the best case scenario, and see which option is best for you. Income sharing is not the best option for everyone. And for people who could make smaller monthly payments, they're probably better off doing something through like a financing loan for the coding school. That way, the total amount is going to be limited. It's not going to be as much as doing something with income sharing. With income sharing, because the school waits until you're actually in a job, the total amount is obviously greater. For people who are paying upfront, the risk, they take a lot of upfront risk, so that amount is smaller. The option that's in the middle is doing something through like a bootcamp financing partner, where your monthly payments are still smaller. They're like $80 or $90 while you're in the school. And there's even schools like Thinkful and Flatiron that provide the 6-month money-back guarantee. So for people who do decide to limit the total amount and go with the financing option, you can just pick a school like Flatiron or Thinkful, and then if you get a job, that's great. Now you're not paying as much as if you did income sharing. But if you don't get a job, then you can ask for a refund. And within 6 months, if you don't get a job, the school will give you a refund. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Feel free to unmute yourself. I know I've muted everyone when I started, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Lauren asked if you get the same job support if you pay upfront versus an ISA. And from that standpoint, it's all identical. No school is going to give you a different treatment based on your payment option, but it's more about which payment option works best for the student. So Marcia asked, if you study with a certain school and they end up not helping you with a job, do you get a certificate after you finish your classes? Marcia, that's a good question. The truth is that these schools, their goal is to get you a job. And when you go to these schools, your goal is to get a job too. They're going to give you a certificate, but honestly, that certificate doesn't really mean much, especially in the tech world, because companies are dropping college requirements because they just want to find people who have the skills and who can do the job, right? So if they're dropping college requirements, then that means that they're not really interested in what certificates you have, it's what skills you have. and you want to make sure that the school that you pick is actually incentivized to teach you skills that are relevant that will eventually get you a job. But that's a great question. So Jen asked if there is such a thing as a mix, make payments, but then maybe pay more afterwards. Jen, so some schools allow you to, if you go the income sharing route, they allow you to pay half of it, let's say for the first year, and then you're only paying back the ISA for the second year. They have those options. What I would say is for people who could make monthly payments, then you can just take out a financing loan through a coding school, and then your total amount will be lower. And the schools that offer a money back guarantee, that also gives you that insurance policy that if you are paying the school monthly, if you don't get a job, you also get a refund. Cool. So Greg asked, so is the bottom we have to pay up front? Greg, so that's not the case. So the scenario is you get to pick the same way how you go online and buy a pair of shoes. You get to pick which payment option works best for you. And so a lot of the schools now offer income sharing where you don't have to pay them until you're in a job. So if you want to go the route of not having to pay them until you're in a job, there's several of schools that offer that for their online, part-time, and full-time courses. And so you get to decide which option works best for you. It's my job to make sure that people know that these options exist. So Jessica asked, can I get a job after completing a boot camp if I don't have a college degree? Jessica, the answer is yes. These companies like Google, Apple, they're all dropping college requirements, not just for people for computer science roles, but for all roles, because they're realizing that it's about what you can do, not what degrees you have. Brittany, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. I think, cool. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, so I want to know if the schools have good support for us because, like, I am a novice to computer. Right now, I'm stuck on IDE, and I can't find my tree on the IDE, and I don't know how to find it. So what do I do?
Yeah. So is your question about, do they have support for people who are applying and doing the prep course?
When you get in school.
Yeah. So a lot of the schools have the prep course, but a nice perk of a prep course is there's usually like a Slack channel or a forum where instructors of that school help people get unstuck. And so in the early days, as you're starting out, what you can do is just message someone on Slack, depending on which prep course you're doing. I think most of them have those channels on Slack, and ask them questions about setting up your environment. But you can also post a tweet on Twitter, and there's going to be people in Career Combat who can help you get unstuck. Or based on the people that you're reaching out each day while you're doing the 21-day challenge, they also could help you get unstuck if you find someone who's a few stages ahead of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. So now I want to talk about the approach for how does someone apply to a school and what approach should people follow to make sure that they have the most leverage in this process. So
there's to go over scholarships at all?
I can definitely cover scholarships and stipends and stuff when I start talking about the actual interview and what questions you should ask. Okay. So yeah, I'll definitely cover that. So the approach that we recommend is not to start a prep course and wait until you fully finish it for you to apply to the school. This might sound counterintuitive because a lot of people want to start a prep course, they want to go through a prep course, pass the challenges, and then schedule the interview. The reason you don't want to do that is in the beginning, you're doing the prep course so you can learn the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But as you're doing it, if you put all your eggs in one basket, let's say you're doing Flatirons prep course and you're going through it and you're waiting to finish Flatirons 80-hour course for you to schedule an interview to get accepted, you're pretty much now putting your fate and your future into one school accepting you. And the only way you find out if you get accepted or not is you have to spend 4 weeks or 6 weeks doing their prep course. And so the advice that we recommend is you should pick at least one prep course that you're doing just so you can get stronger technically. But the interview process for a lot of these schools is you just schedule a non-technical interview up front so you can get conditionally accepted into multiple schools. And the way it would look like is, let's say you narrow down your top choices to, let's say, Rhythm School, Flatiron, Thinkful, and Lambda, and they have programs that work with your schedule and your finances. We recommend that you apply to all four and try to have these non-technical interviews early on. And there's a few reasons for that. One is they're not going to be asking you technical questions. Give me 1 second. Let me tell the guys behind me to be quiet. First, you get to ask them questions about their courses, stipends, and scholarships. A lot of the schools, they'll have like every month or every 2 months, they'll have like a batch of scholarships that they're giving out. By the time they announce it on the website, they'll have those scholarships already gone. So if you schedule your time to speak to the school early on, one way it helps you is it ensures that if there are scholarships, you're going to be qualified for it, and they might even tell you that in 2 weeks that we're going to be announcing a scholarship to make sure you apply. So that's one of the reasons why you should think about scheduling these interviews first. The way it gives you leverage too is if you speak to 3 schools, you actually might find out something about each school that you didn't know before, and it could easily go from being your 3rd favorite to your most favorite if you find out about their teaching style or scholarships or other options that they offer. And ultimately, once you get conditionally accepted, the second step is for you to get fully accepted, which is finishing their prep course and passing the challenges. But at least you're not waiting, and you're not counting on that one school to accept you. Because once you get conditional acceptances, it's only a matter of time before you finish the full prep course and pass their challenges. But at least you have confidence that this school already accepted you conditionally, and now all you have to do is do the prep course. Does that make sense about the process and this approach? Cool. Vanessa, did you have a question? I think you're muted.
No,
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to ask how I can get the playback because my battery is low and I'm not anywhere I can charge my phone right now.
So you asked about how can you what?
How can I listen to the rest of
the meeting? I'm recording it, so I'll share the recording with you so you can watch it later.
Okay, so do I need to do anything to get the
you can just I'll message you through the app, and I'll send you the link. Just remind me through the app, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vanessa.
May I ask a question?
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you were saying there, like, some of the schools have like scholarships and things like that. I'm just curious if you know if any of them like accept. I'm a veteran, so I was curious to know whether or not I could use my GI Bill for this school or not. That's
a good question. So there are definitely schools that offer scholarships for veterans. Most of the top schools do. It varies, the amount for the scholarship varies, but there's definitely schools that offer that. And you should ask every advisor you speak with, because you have nothing to lose by asking. I've heard of some schools based on region that offer GI Bill. They accept GI Bill. You and I would have to just follow up after, and I would have to check with them to see if which schools do that. As more boot camps become like a standard now like federal government is starting to like recognize that, and they're releasing regulations. So it's a case by case basis, but we can sync up about it after. Just message me through the app. Cool. But I just wanted to recap the approach. So don't wait to speak to the advisors, because you're going to find out information about their programs, teaching styles. So schedule your interviews. Make sure, though, that you are working through at least one prep course. That prep course doesn't mean that you're going to be applying to that school. The prep course ensures that you're getting your fundamentals down. And as you're doing that, you're also getting conditionally accepted. And some people ask me, how do I increase my chances of getting a scholarship or me getting accepted? And I'm about to show you how you can do that. So give me 1 second. But the short answer is leverage Twitter, because all these boot camps are active on Twitter. And a lot of them realize that you all have amazing stories, and if they can help you become successful, and you're already demonstrating that you're someone who's going to put in the work, you're going to be successful, that you may not realize this now, but they want to have people like you in their courses, because then they can point and say, this is someone who became successful and we were part of that journey. You know, they want to help teachers become successful. They want to help veterans become successful, because then your success helps them also increase their own brand. And whenever they have scholarships, they also want to make sure that they go to people who actually are active, who are putting in work, who are doing things. And I'm going to show you a few examples of people who have used Twitter to get scholarships and stipends. Let me pull up her profile. 1 second. Yeah, but also reach out to each other, because I think there's usually people who find out about scholarships and then they tweet about it, and those are usually the best things that give you that inside information before everyone else finds out. Give me 1 second. I wanna find that tweet. But before I find it, does anyone have any more questions about the approach? Feel free to unmute yourself. Brittany asked the question in the chat. So she said, should we wait until we finish the prep courses or start applying to schools? So the short answer is, make sure you're taking at least one prep course and you're going through it, but start the application process with multiple schools. So then you're not counting on one school to accept you. You get conditional acceptances from most schools, and these schools are not going to ask you technical questions, but that will help you narrow down the choices of schools that you got admitted to, and then you pick their prep course, and then you focus on finishing that school's prep course. So that would be my advice. Any other questions? Let me share my screen so you can see it. So I'm not sure if people have met Alexis, but reach out to her through the app. She was one of the people in Career Karma who got Lambda stipend. I'm not sure how many people heard about Lambda stipend, but they basically are paying people $2,000 a month for 9 months to help them do their full-time coding bootcamp. And Alexis, she was very active on Twitter. She was speaking to Lambda's staff, and she was tweeting about things. And if you look here, there's a lot of people in Career Karma course supporting her. There's a lot of like Lambda and their CEO and their investors are also supporting her. So one of the best ways for you to get, I know this is after the fact, but there's a lot of people who were able to get scholarships just by showing the schools that they're excited about their courses and they're scheduling interviews, they're applying, and that also gives you leverage in this process because then schools become competitive amongst themselves. And if they see that other schools want you, then they also want you as well. So it's kind of like getting multiple offers from multiple companies. So definitely leverage Twitter, not just for stipends, but also for getting accepted. In the last 10 minutes, I want to share, give me 1 second. And so I want to cover in the last 10 minutes, what is the approach for you getting accepted? So the way the interviews, has anyone already had any interviews with boot camps?
I have one coming tomorrow.
Okay, Marcia, you got this. But Jessica, do you mind sharing kind of what that experience was like with the rest of the group?
Well, I only had the. Are you talking about like the
non-technical one? Yeah.
I don't know. It was just more so like a personality type thing. I guess asking me, you know, I guess what my goals are. Why am I interested in coding? And I guess trying to see if it was a good culture fit, like the school for me. So yeah, I did it with Flatiron, and so far I'm conditionally accepted. I just have to do the pre-course work.
Okay, nice, congrats. And that's exactly right. Like the not technical interviews, it's more of a personality and a culture check. And most of the time, they just want to make sure that the person who's applying, they've actually done their due diligence about the school. They are like, they are aware of like what software engineers do. They're aware of the process. The last thing they want to do is just accept you when you're not ready. And then 3 months into the process, you're going to realize that this is you actually don't want to become a developer. And then you're going to be leaving bad reviews or it's going to create drama. And the way they avoid doing that is just by conditionally accepting someone. Because once they see that this person is hungry, they're doing the work, they're excited, then ultimately it's going to be you passing their prep course and passing the challenges that gets you fully accepted. What happens sometimes is people wait until they finish the prep course to apply and have this non-technical interview, and sometimes for whatever reason people don't get accepted, and then they have to start over again with a different school. And that's why these non-technical interviews are pretty straightforward. There are a few things that I'm going to mention now that you should avoid doing just so you don't get rejected. And the things might seem like they're super obvious, but people still say them and they get rejected for them. And one of the biggest ones is they're going to ask you things like, why should they invest in you? Or it's going to be an open-ended question to allow you to tell them about yourself, tell them about your story, tell them about what you know about their school, about this journey. A lot of people get it wrong by talking about going through their school and then starting their own business. Because a lot of people are excited about learning how to code so they can build apps. So a lot of the schools are worried that if you go through their school and they have income sharing, which means that they don't get paid until you're in a job. If you go through a course and you just start your own company, then you're probably not paying yourself a salary, and most companies go out of business. And so if you tell them that gets you rejected because they have no reason why, like you haven't given them a reason why they should invest in you. With that said, though, I think most people, what they mean is they still want to get a job, and then they want to work for a few years and then start their companies. So if that's you, just make sure that it's clear that your goal is to go through the course, get a job, learn from other senior engineers in your company, and then start a company after. Because I've seen some people get rejected and they were clueless why, and then I spoke to the schools and those were the reasons. And usually we could get it overturned and tell the schools that that's not what this person meant. But it's just easier if you just tell them, like, you actually tell them, like, you want to get a job, because everyone wants to get a job, or most people want to get a job after they graduate. The other thing that people get rejected for is just not being able to attend all of the classes. I think you only are required to attend 95% of the classes. But if you have a conflict, like you get home at 7:30 and the class starts at 7, then a lot of the time that will get you rejected because your schedule doesn't work. And you can avoid making these mistakes just by making sure that you pick a school that has classes in your time zone that fit your schedule. And on the same topic, the people on the East Coast actually have a slight advantage, because people on the East Coast can attend the evening classes for the East Coast time zone, but also for the West Coast. So if, let's say, you're in Houston or you're in Atlanta and you don't get home until 7 or 8, well, you can just sign up for the Pacific time zone evening class, and then you can attend like your late night. So it might be like a late time for you, but you can still make the part-time hours work. So that's another good thing to ask your instructors if you're afraid that, or your advisors, if you're afraid that your schedule is not going to work. Finally, it might seem a little cheesy, but like, try to just be yourself and explain why you're the right person for the school. The way you do this is by talking about other challenges that you have overcome before. Everyone has overcame challenges with learning a new skill, learning how to play a sport or how to play a musical instrument. You just need to demonstrate to them not just things that you've done, but how you taught yourself those skills, and tie it back to coding. So if you taught yourself how to play the cello or the piano, don't just tell them that before you taught yourself how to play the cello. Tell them, what did you do when you got stuck, right? Tell them the thought process and your approach. What did you do in the beginning when you wanted to give up and you wanted to quit? What did you do to find mentorship and guidance? And then tie it back to coding, and you could be honest and be like, hey, when I first started doing coding, it didn't come naturally to me, but then I started thinking about all the other things I've done in life that were difficult too, and I persevered with those things, and that's my plan for getting better at coding. I'm not going to give up no matter what. And the reason these stories are important is, first, they're going to remember your story. They're going to get to know your personality, your demeanor, your drive. And at the end of the day, they want to have confidence that you're someone who's going to put in the work, who's going to try, who's going to show up every day. And if you can do that, then they'll be able to teach you and make sure that you become a developer. So those are the things that you should start thinking about as you're going into these non-technical interviews. They're big milestones, because once you get conditionally accepted into a school, usually it's just a matter of time to finish the prep course and get technically accepted. Some people might finish the prep course in 2 or 3 weeks and get fully accepted. For some people, it might take a month or 2. No matter what that timeline is, once you get conditionally accepted, our community will support you and we'll make sure that you know enough technically for you to get fully accepted before your desired start date. So do it in order, follow my advice. Some of it might sound contrary, but just follow it, speak to other people who are applying, work together with others, and you're also going to be successful. We have about 4 minutes left. Any other questions? No questions? Feel free to post your questions in the chat. One thing I'll say, again, to answer, I know I answered Brittany's question, but I'll say it again. When you do go into these interviews and they ask you, so have you have you done any courses or have you coded before? A lot of people, they sell themselves short and they just straight up say, no, I'm a complete beginner, even though they're working on prep courses for other schools. You know what I mean? Like, you might be doing Flatiron's course, but if you're applying to Thinkful, you're like, no, I'm just starting out. And your goal is to be like honest with them, and you should be honest with them, but don't underestimate things that you've already done, because some of you have done Code Academy courses, even if it was 6 months ago. Some of you have done other tutorials online, and some of you are doing prep courses. And if you're not, then you should sign up for at least one prep course and start doing it. So when you do have these interviews, you can always point to it and say, I'm actually doing a prep course now. I'm on the CSS section and I'm building a page. And it's not so much that they want to ask you technical questions, because they're not. They just want to see that this person actually started putting in work in learning how to code. Does that make sense?
Yes, because like today I got a congratulation, and it says, oh, from Flatiron, that you can now apply for schools.
Okay, nice.
So that's what you're talking about. I can use that as a reference, right?
Yeah, so you can say that. So when you're interviewing with Flatiron, you can be like, hey, I'm already like deep into your prep course. If you're speaking to a different school like Lambda or Thinkful, I don't think they're gonna honestly care that you got this offer from Flatiron to like continue applying. But what you could say is that, hey, I've been doing other prep courses and I've been building things for other schools, and I'm interested in your school, and I want to be able to get accepted because I like your school for X and Y.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely emphasize things that you've been working on. If you have some ideas for projects you want to do before the bootcamp starts, tell them that. Be like, hey, I'm actually trying to build my personal page before I even begin. So they want to hear people who are just excited and enthusiastic. Philip had a question. How are people who have questions while taking a prep course supported on Career Karma? There is no tab or Slack channel. So what we say is you can reach out to people in your peer circle and see if there's other people doing the same prep course as you. You'd be surprised how much effective it is, even if there's two beginners working together, how much you learn by either teaching someone something or you working through a problem with someone else. And for that reason, next Tuesday, like I said, at 6 p.m. Pacific, we're going to have a panel of people who are part of the FFT squad. It's a study group that was self-organized by people in Career Karma. We're going to share their approach of working together, learning how to code, and getting accepted and starting different coding schools. And so if you attend that meeting, I'm going to help group people and help connect people after that meeting. So you're in a group with 5 or 6 other folks who are also learning how to code, and you'll be supporting each other on this journey.
What about Sunday? The blueprint. Are you doing the blueprint? You have a meeting scheduled for Sunday, the 7th?
Yeah, so we're going to have a blueprint coming up. And I'm glad that you bring it up, because the last thing that I wanted you to do today was just sign up for the blueprint. That's when you might have seen pictures on Twitter, but that's when we're going to help you create a roadmap. And having a roadmap, it's super important, because you wouldn't go climbing a mountain without a roadmap. So you should definitely not career transition without a roadmap either. And so I'm going to share on a Sunday, and there's going to be other times during the week where I'm going to share with you a template that we'll fill out on the call on Sunday. And you literally have all the dates, all the stages, and all of the milestones that you need to hit for you to be able to get accepted into a school, complete the school, go through a job search, and get a job. So it will take out all the guesswork. Let me get this link for you. 1 second. I'm going to share the blueprint link in the chat. Make sure you click on it and you So here's the link. Make sure you click on it and you have it opened. So when I end the meeting, you'll be able to book the blueprint coming up on Sunday. And if you haven't yet, keep doing the 21-day challenge. I know we're in the process of releasing week 2. So if you completed week 1, just wait like a few days. This weekend, we're going to release week 2. And when you finish the challenge, we're actually gonna have T-shirts that will ship to you that say "Protect Your Dreams" on the back. And so we want to see all of you succeed. We want to see all of you win. So keep doing it. Keep reaching out to each other. Attend our workshops, and we'll help each other break in. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Keep me posted if you enjoyed this meeting. If it was helpful, please share some of your takeaways in your peer groups, just so you can also start the discussion. And if you're struggling with something, please share it in your peer groups, and you'll see how many people can come in and help you out. So have a great night, everyone, and let's break in.
Bye. Thank you.
Alicia, Marcia, Brittany, thank you so much. Jessica, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Have a great night, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.